Dominique, hello, good afternoon. Good to see you again. That's our second conversation that we are recording. Our first conversation was about neuroscience and psychology of job search. We really wanted to do that to support all the people who are in between jobs, who are looking for a new opportunity right now. This conversation is a bit more high level. We will be talking about employee engagement and the psychology of employee experience, engagement and change, and all of those very interesting things. And again, bringing in this sort of tips from our experiences as a neuroscientist, as a business psychologist into that. I'm really looking forward to it.
Me too. Thanks, Pavel.
And just to begin, would you like to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So my name's Dominique and I am the founder of Neuro Work. Now, what I do with that is I use neuroscience and the latest findings and apply them to change so that we can get some really practical tips of how to structure change programs and how to troubleshoot things like resistance when they come up. So it's the idea of putting the human at the centre of the change projects rather than whatever the thing is like the IT. So that's what I focus on. And how about you, Pavel?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Pavel Golenistsev. I am a business psychologist, a coach, and the founder of Business Purpose. I created this company with the mission, with the intention, with the thought that we just spend at least 1/3 of our lives at work. And we want to make sure that we have as good experience as possible during those 1/3 of our work, of our life that we call work. So what I do in my work is I help companies to make sure that they find, hire, engage, develop, retain people who are great at their job and who really enjoy doing the job, and that they can help their people to feel better at work through understanding what are the individual needs for every individual, how to measure that effectively, and how to enable their teams to perform at their best while also taking care of their well-being at work.
So important right now. Absolutely. I mean, especially with everything that's going on, being able to have an engaged workforce where people actually enjoy the work and they're listened to is really, really important. So I'm excited that we're getting to talk about this right now because it's something that I think is in a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dominic, we initially started this conversation by talking about the psychology and the neuroscience of change, of how people go through change in life, in organizations, in businesses, and how they feel about change. And I think you have some really great insights to share based on your expertise and your discipline.
Thank you. Well, same back at you as well. So hopefully over this conversation we'll be sharing those. I think one of the biggest things on people's mind at the moment is kind of where to start, because what we've done over the past few months is we've had that really intense period where a lot of companies were going through upgrading digital transformation.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that everyone on work who was there could work virtually. So that was quite an intense learning curve for a lot of people and a lot of companies on change programs. And now we're moving into a phase where actually companies are looking a lot at their real estate, so their office space. Do they actually still need as much? And what are they using their offices for now? Does it make sense to use them as places to just work through the day and get through your to-do list? Or does it make more sense to turn them into kind of innovation hubs where it's all about the human connection? So we've got companies thinking about that and starting to make changes in that space. And unfortunately, we have got the reality that actually there's just a lot of cost cutting that has to be done following the pandemic. So there's a lot of companies looking into how to realise that cost saving. And that does usually involve some sort of reorganisations that impact employees and suppliers usually as well. So with all of these things kind of going on at once, from an organisational point of view, it can be really, really overwhelming. And for those who are tasked with the project of getting all of this thing done, all this change through the system, it's really hard to know where to start and how to organise the change programme so that you have the best chance of everything working the way you want it to. So when I'm helping clients through change, there are normally two issues that come up time and time again. And I don't know if these are the same with you, Pavel, so I'd love to hear. One is the issue with third parties involved in change. So IT providers are a classic. people kind of saying, my gosh, we're not getting the system we want, it hasn't worked, people aren't happy. And those types of third-party tensions actually just come down to communications usually, and then setting clear expectations with what you expect from each of you. So those are normally resolved through actually reconnecting the third party with the company at a very human level, so that that communication can flow a lot better. But the other biggest problem that I do help clients with is resistance from their people to change. And that I help clients understand is just entirely natural from a brain point of view, because our brain is a survival prediction machine. So actually it hates all of that ambiguity and uncertainty that change brings. So that manifests as inertia and rejection, part of resistance, because the brain is saying, actually, no, this is a really uncertain situation. I don't know how best to proceed that keeps you safe. I'm feeling threatened. I'm just going to stop and hunker down until I know more. So that's a lot of the inertia and rejection that we see as part of change. And because our brains are also really well built in terms of being energy efficient, actually what we see is that forming new habits is really hard. So not only are we in a threat state where forming new habits is physiologically really hard to do because the wrong parts of the brain are activated, what we're also finding is that forming new habits takes more energy. So the brain's normal way of working, where it uses all of those existing habits, I'm going to do what I've always done because that's really energy efficient for me to do, that's really fighting hard to try and stop you from changing the workplace and changing the way you do things and forming new habits. So that I see a lot as resistance. And the final point that I see from the brain point of view that applies at the moment especially is actually the control point. So brains are really happy when they've got control of the situation, because that means that they can actually put into practice whatever they want in terms of the prediction. So they've got a good prediction that's going to keep you safe, but they need to have control of the situation to be able to put that into place. Now, ultimately at the moment, a lot of control has gone from our lives. Where we work is starting to go again as a second wave. Who we see, who we socialise with, all of these things are being taken away. And when you look at organisational change generally, a lot of the issues I see are empowerment. People feel as if they haven't gotten in control or empowerment of where that change is going to take them. And so that also has a negative effect on the brain, and it manifests as resistance and inertia again. So, I mean, that's what I'm seeing. And the usual kind of starting point to try and unlock that is things like quick wins, which I've talked a lot about in change. So it's kind of like almost a jargon term. But a quick win at its best, what it does is it actually helps the brain feel that there's less ambiguity, that it has control over the situation, and that the efforts that the brain is putting in to form those new habits, to change the way it works, are actually going in a positive direction. So it's that combination of resistance and then counteracting it with quick wins that I think is a really good way to start to structure, why do I start with change? And that's where the power of the employee survey comes in. And that's, Pavel, where we're going to get into really big detail. I've spoken for a long time. I would love to hear your experiences. Like, what do you see most often in change, and where to start with it?
Dominique, I think this is super interesting what you're saying, and it makes so much sense. It's perfectly normal for us, for every human being, to be a bit cautious with change. And we all are different in how we are. For some of us, it's a matter of just getting used to it, of accepting that change is the only constant thing we can have in life.
Yep.
But sometimes it's also just realizing that there's nothing that can be really done about change, and it's going to happen anyway. But businesses need to make sure that their people feel as comfortable as possible about change. And it's perfectly normal not to feel entirely comfortable with things changing because of all the perfectly natural reasons that you've described. But having worked on employee engagement survey strategy with more than 20 large companies, I've seen something that's very interesting in the survey data, is that a big aspect, a big point that's affecting how well a company is managing its change, its transformation, its development, its employee engagement and experience strategy, is around whether people feel that there is an open and honest communication in the business. It's about how they trust their leaders, how they trust their managers, and whether they feel that change is being communicated well, so that they're not just left to their own devices to just figuring out that's happening. And I think lately in the last months, we can see that very well with what the companies have been going through furloughing staff. When there is a furlough and at one point the person had a job and at another point they're expected like to learn gardening, and they feel, oh, what's that, what does that mean, what's going on? But it wasn't really communicated to them. Does it mean that their job is at risk? To what extent? Does it mean that they're being valued more? Does it mean that they're being valued less? How do they make sense of it? Making sure that people know what are the steps for the change, making sure that it's communicated as clearly as possible. That's why we're going through this initiative. That's what's going to be the outcome. That's what's going to be the impact on our organization, on your business unit, a team, and on you as an individual. And then listening to people, having more of those one-on-one conversations. And that's something that managers need to be able to do in your business. When people have a chance to talk about their concerns, and for some people react to change in one way, some in another. We are all different. That's the beauty of diversity in organizations. We're all different. We all react in different ways. But making sure that organization knows how to understand what are the preferences for this or that individual, and addressing those preferences still in an efficient way, but in a way that can help business to make sure its people aren't as resistant to change, because it's no longer this point of, oh, I don't know what's going on, so I'd better just stick to my guns and dig in and hope that this initiative goes away, but actually accepting and easing into it a bit more. This is so important. So I guess based on what you've said there, Dominique, you mentioned a few quick wins. Can you share some, like, what are some of the quick wins that you usually share with your clients?
Well, it's a really good question. And actually, they do depend on the client. So they're very client specific, and they depend on what you've listened to at the people. So again, going back to the employee survey, it's always got to be tailored to the people. And I think that's something that we do tend to miss quite a lot in the change management industry, is that we can get really focused on the thing that we're doing. So in the digital transformation, we could get really excited about the fact that this new digital system and platform is going to help connect everyone, and that's going to fix all of the problems. But actually, it's not. It's the people and how they use it that we're going to fix or not the problems. And putting the people back at the center and listening, which is exactly what you've been talking about, really helps you identify actually what should you focus on as a quick win. I think in terms of the things that I like the most in the data, and if we look at a few examples, I would be asking questions like, what is it that you like the most at the moment in your job? What is it you don't like at the moment in your job? What is it you find the hardest? And if I'm troubleshooting an ongoing kind of change project, I will ask actually, what are you finding the hardest to do in a different way? What is it that you feel is holding you back from changing and holding the organization back? And those are key metrics which you get that real sense of, this is what it means to live this change program, to be the person who is going to be ultimately the action of the change program. So those are the ones that I normally look at, and from the answers to those questions, you can find some really good quick wins. So you can approach the things where if it's something that people are identifying as being an obstacle now to doing their job well, then you can try and fix those if there's something fixable. The things that people love, you can augment that. So you can show that you're going to do more of that so that they enjoy their job more. So it's very much a bespoke and tailor-made solution for a quick win, but there are always some to help keep that momentum going, to get people out of that stage where they're in resistance, inertia, change fatigue, which is an overused term, but the fatigue that people feel when they're going through so much change, and they're just, because it's such a high energy activity for the brain, they've just sort of given up. They've gone for their cup of tea and they're just sitting at the desk and hoping it will all go away. But if you can just show people a little personal quick win or a team quick win, that gives them the brain chemistry and the brain state to be energized and engaged again, which then opens the door for all the rest of the change to come through. So I mean, you've got so much experience, 20 companies you already helped in your employee engagement survey. I would love to know, how do you make sure that people are at the center of that survey, and what are the bits that you focus on as well? I'll be taking notes.
Dominique, what you said there about the importance of focusing on the people is absolutely crucial. And having worked as a consultant with many companies, something that we do see in businesses time and again is that, especially with some of the larger organizations, it's like they understand the idea of employee engagement. They understand the idea of experience, of employee well-being, of better performance. But they think that it's just about the survey, and that's coming from a consultant who specializes in employee engagement survey. It's not just about the survey, it is about the people. It's not about gathering the data, it's not about the numbers. But that's something that we see so much right now in the engagement survey industry, in companies, that they think that it's about asking a bunch of questions, getting a few reports, sitting in this boardroom, or more so now on a Zoom call, and just going through a few numbers and then saying, okay, those are the numbers that we get. Now, see you next year where we'll measure it again. And companies think that just by investing their efforts into running those surveys, they're getting enough data and they're actually committing to employee engagement. But there's so much more work that needs to be done based on that. And it's not about the data, it's not about the numbers, it's about the people. You are not running an engagement survey so that you can say, look at how we're doing against the benchmark compared to other companies. You're running the survey so that you can understand better what's going on for your people. And when you understand what's going on for your people, you want to implement change based on that in a more targeted way. And that's another mistake that I've seen so many companies make. They invest in the survey, they understand philosophically that it's about people, but they come up with too many ways they're going to change that, because too many ways, there are too many data points that they see in their survey, so they just go ahead and try to solve everything. When you try to solve everything, you don't end up solving anything very well, and that's when you get this survey fatigue, when people say, well, we keep answering questions, we keep giving you feedback, and nothing ever happens. That's one problem. Another problem that companies need to address, and I've actually had I was working with one large client and they were telling me that a problem for us is that we're really committed. We spend so much energy, so much of our budget on learning and training solutions based on the survey feedback. And then employees tell us that we don't do anything based on the survey feedback. And I asked them, well, have you actually communicated to them that this or that training initiative or a change initiative or whatever is happening because of the feedback they gave? Well, no, we sort of thought that it's clear enough. Well, you want to make sure that people know that you're listening to them and you care about their opinion, because coming back to our initial point about the sense of control, the sense of security that we all seek as human beings, we want to know that our voices are being heard. We want to feel that this is happening. You told us, we did that. We want to know that when we share our feedback, what our experience, how it can be improved, that's why those initiatives are happening. It's not another HR initiative. It's not another training initiative. It's not another chance to make everyone spend a few days sitting in a room listening to some corporate trainer, but it's about making sure that everyone is having better experience because you told us, and that's what we are implementing here right now. How has it been in your experience, Dominique? what do companies, what do you think companies get right more often these days, and what are the some areas where companies like are really could be doing better when it comes to change, when it comes to listening to their people?
Absolutely. So there is very much a lot of established practice on the engagement survey and sending it out at regular intervals that are well thought through. And they have certain times when different kind of areas of change will get prominence in terms of the data and questions that are asked. And so that is good. The thinking through to think, actually, we don't want to give too much survey fatigue, and we're going to coordinate across different departments to send out different questions at different times. That is great. I think I'm recognising the same things as you in terms of the communication and feedback. So a lot of the feedback and communication tends to be very generic, saying, thank you, we have noticed these are the trends. And the trends are interesting because everyone's interested to know what the kind of overall view on things are. We're just curious as human beings. But it doesn't then go the extra step to say, and on this particular point, here is where your feedback has really helped.
Mhm.
And even more further, saying this is where we want you to shape that change. So again, that granularity of saying, yes, we're gonna feedback, we've listened to you, but actually now we're taking control of what that looks like. That can also be a little bit disengaging, especially if it's something really emotive. If it's something to do with the way you have performance management or appraisals, if it's something the way you have team structures, those are really emotive, easily threatening states for the brain. So to be able to give a little bit back, more control, to say these are the issues that we've identified, we've got an idea and a budget to fix them, but we'd like to engage you in the fixing of them, and we're looking for volunteers. That's a really good way to kind of get even more engagement to help drive through that change that otherwise may have been felt like it's being done to people again. And just going back to the point of listening generally, from a brain point of view, just feeling that we've been listened to, our brain's reward networks are activated. So it's such a simple and powerful tool. It can't be underestimated. And I think the employee engagement survey route is brilliant because it gets some really powerful, wide-ranging data. But I think we're not yet using the listening tool enough in our day-to-day as managers. So I think managers can really reinforce the employee survey practices and actually take some of the questions that are raised and actually play them back at relevant intervals with their people during one-to-ones, during team meetings, and just continue that conversation. So it takes a life form rather than just being a static point in time event. And by doing that, teams will feel continually more listened to, and will have a little bit more of that sense of engagement with the engagement survey when it comes around. So yeah, that's what I'm seeing as a kind of a positive and area for improvement for clients at the moment. Does that what you're seeing as well?
Absolutely, Dominique. It's a question of continuous listening, continuous, sustained, open and honest conversation between employees and their managers, managers and the senior leadership and employees. It's making sure that everyone's involved in it and everyone feels that their voices are being heard as much as possible. And everyone is different. I've spoken to some people who feel that employee service just shouldn't be a thing anymore at all because they feel quite cynical about it, because not enough is being done by the companies to actually make service work. It doesn't mean that the system itself, that the idea of listening doesn't work. All it means is that the system that we're currently working with isn't quite helpful because the focus isn't on the people, the focus isn't on actually working with the feedback and letting people understand that continuous change is happening because of feedback. And Dominique, you mentioned there a very important point of having those conversations, also one-on-ones. Just survey is not enough. Survey is just a first step. It's about creating this overall understanding, the high-level understanding of where an organization, a department, a team is. It's helpful up to a point, but the real job really happens is when you then use the survey to go for targeted solutions. That's when you want to have more of focus groups, discussion groups, one-on-ones, or team meetings when a smaller team talks to their manager trying to understand what's going on. And there's a whole set of suggested best practices for how to make this environment feel safe for people so that they can feel that they can express what's actually working and not working in the business and what they can do about it. But it's also very much about whether managers and leaders know how to have those difficult conversations with their people, how to talk about things like, well, what's going on for you, what's actually going on for you, how have you been, how are things. Something very interesting, yesterday actually I ran a webinar for HR leaders. The webinar was about virtual team success and how to implement coaching in organizations to coach for performance and well-being. Based on the questionnaire that I've shared with the audience, we found out that while most businesses felt they were pretty well prepared for virtual working, and they were sort of on the fence with how well their managers are enabled to talk about employee well-being and start those conversations. Many HR leaders felt that their managers don't know how to coach for performance and how to have those conversations, not just about employee experience, but what can actually be done to then improve their performance, whether it's working remotely, whether it's about overcoming the day-to-day challenges in a business. And that's when we're taking the step from this overall high level of employee survey and go into actually understanding what's going on for every individual. What's going on for this person, for that person? What are their preferences? Do they prefer to work from home more? Do they really need more of human interaction? What can we do for them? And that's when businesses need to be having those one-on-one conversations, because when people feel that they're being listened, when business is doing as much as is practically possible, and more is possible practically if you do it right, when the business does that, what is practically possible for their people to make sure that they feel listened, that's when people will be less resistant to change, because it's not even a change anymore, it's a continuous improvement, development. Are we playing with words here? Maybe. But the main point here is that it's about giving people that sense of control and entrusting people with the sense of control to help them feel like they are being safe, valued, and engaged.
Absolutely. All of that resonates so much. And there's so much that managers can do. But I agree that not all organizations have trained managers to be coaches. I think it's getting better. The value of coaching in the industry across different sectors is definitely growing. So it's becoming more and more recognized. But I remember some of the early kind of leadership courses that I used to go in and help with. And they were very related to sort of command and control almost. This is how you're a good leader, and this is the way you act, and this is what you do, rather than actually it's about the other person. It's not about you, it's about the people that you're leading. And so that switch, I think, is one of the most positive that I've seen in the industry over the past few years, and something that I'm delighted to hear you're helping as well. And I think it's that sense of control as well, in terms of understanding what you do and don't like in work, and that sense that at the moment we've got a chance and the opportunity to change it and shape it for ourselves. So I think that's an opportunity for companies at the moment, because things have changed so much from the pandemic. Actually, we can have that conversation with people to say, okay, look, what does your day look like? What is your ideal day? If you could choose it, what would it look like? It probably wouldn't be 9 to 5. It would probably be, 10 till 2, then some childcare, then logging back on in the evening. And when are you most productive? Because we actually do all have different productive states. Now there's been research in Olympic athletics, I think, athletics, yeah, probably, but Olympians, so really good people at sports, who have been looking at actually what do you identify as a morning person, afternoon, evening person, and looking at the way their times change depending on the time of day that they race and when they feel that they're at their best. And while it's only a tenth of a second difference, actually it does tally. So it's not, by me saying I'm not a morning person, which I'm not, but by me saying that, it's not that I'm lazy, it's not that I don't want to participate, it's because I have a different rhythm to someone who is a morning person. And at the moment, with technology, we've got a flexibility to be able to work around not only people's lifestyles, but also our physiology. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing with clients at the moment is helping them structure, having those conversations with people, and then helping them understand a little bit more about when are they most productive, when during the day do they best just get on with things, when do they like to have complicated, amazing creative brainstorming meetings, when do they just actually want to chat and have a team catch up or a one-to-one. And so helping structure that day, I think, is really key. And it falls back again to that employee listening. The employee survey, it used to try and get at things like that, but the science and the social norms weren't there yet to accept it. So I think the next step, along with that coaching that you're really helping unlock on the manager side, is actually, if we understand ourselves at individual level as well, we can create a working environment that's better for us, where we can accept change a lot more readily, where we can start to be a lot more engaged and productive no matter what life throws at us. So yeah, I think it's I see positivity ahead, even if this is a difficult time. Are you seeing a little bit of positivity as well?
Absolutely. I do think that with all of those changes we've been going through, like, and this really has been like this year, 2020, the change has happened on such a quicker pace than everyone was say they were ready for, because change was so overdue. And right now we'll be looking back like in the history books a few years from now. We'll be looking back at this time and as before and after, and thinking like, wow, those were some dark times for organizations and for how they were treating their people. And this is changing right now. A lot of things will there's still a long way to go. When someone looks at their organization right now and they think, well, that's not the case in our organization, that wouldn't work. But when we really take the high level bird's eye view on the things, that there is some great change happening about businesses understanding that it's more and more about their people, about listening, about creating this unique experiences to make sure that people do enjoy 1/3 of their life that's called work, and to make sure that people can really have better experiences, and make sure that managers know how to talk about that in a productive way with their people.
Absolutely. That psychologically safe space. Again, that's become quite a buzzword over the past probably 18 months. It started to surface. And knowing how to create that, what makes psychological safety. And again, it's like the diversity and inclusion. A lot of initiatives are put forward in organizations and a lot of training, but as yet they're not necessarily being lived. And I think psychological safety is the next one, which is so linked to diversity and inclusion and the positive outcome of that. I think that's the next one, which I think companies can really focus on and see a tangible difference, getting that to be a lived-in experience, so that those conversations with managers, you can be completely open and honest without fear of retribution. You can put your hand up if something isn't working at the moment without that fear of any kind of backlash. And I think that's something, again, that coaching really helps with. It helps unlock a psychologically safe space for organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps people to have more of those conversations about effective communication in their business, about the power relationships in the business, about understanding what's going on when a person is talking to their manager, to their senior leader. What are the dynamics of communication? How can those dynamics be improved to make sure that everyone feels that they can be more like themselves, so that leaders don't feel they have to pretend by having certain behaviors that they read in one of those like lists, like 7 tips how to behave like a leader things. When they feel that they should behave like that, well, it doesn't feel natural to them to behave like that, and others feel that. Or how do employees need to feel when they're actually safe and relaxed and can feel authentic and can feel themselves at work? And that's the future where the world of work is headed. And it's so important for businesses right now to understand how they can ensure their people are having those better, healthier, more productive experiences and environments at work.
Absolutely. And especially, you've touched on another really good point. At work, that means something so different now. So it's the idea of how do you adapt what you were doing, what you were creating the at work to be. And I think that's a conversation which is going to evolve even more so over the next few months. What does safe space mean at work now? For me, I think it's always going to be in plants, but there's lots of other elements as well. And it feeds into the culture as well, which I already, I don't know if you're seeing the same, but I'm seeing a lot of evolution of cultures. And now that they're dissipated, now that they're actually decentralized, as it were, there's a lot of evolution going on. And the idea of, and a company culture suddenly becomes more individualized because you're experiencing that country culture while you're immersed in your own world. So actually your perspective, your picture of what it means starts to take on a more individualized basis the more you work from home. And that can be positive because actually it can be, it feels more something safe to me, something that's more aligned to me, I'm more engaged. But then when you look at things like collaborative workshops, like innovation, like change, like diversity and inclusion, actually us each having a slightly more individualized view of what the company culture is and what it means can cause a few more conflicts. So I think, again, the importance of having coaching out there and one-to-ones with managers to be able to deal with that head on and to be able to be open about it and be able to surface those issues in a really safe way so that the company and team culture can remain as harmonized and positive way as possible. That's going to be really important over the next few months and probably next year as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dominique. And I think just the fact that we see our clients, companies we work with, are having those conversations, are starting to think about that. That's something that's a great sign of progress. That's very important. But there is so much more work to be done in this area, and I'm actually very excited about the years ahead. There will be lots of work, but also some great improvements for overall sense of well-being, and that we have as companies will be changing and adapting their cultures, not just because it's the right thing from the ethical standpoint, but because that's what companies will need to do to survive as businesses, to attract and retain and develop the best possible talent and achieve their business goals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So inspiring. Now, we've covered a tiny bit off topic, which was brilliant. I love it. Segueing. I guess one thing is, if we bring it back practically for employee surveys, we've talked about the value. We've talked about the idea that they need to link into larger parts of organizations and what you do with managers and one-to-ones. But if you're starting a survey and you just want to start anew, you want to start afresh and have a survey that really works, there's also that element of what tools do you use. So I know a lot of big organizations already have bespoke ones or kind of customized versions of the big providers. But I guess, is there one at the moment that's shining out in the market as being particularly good for one thing or another? Or is it really a case that it's bespoke and it depends, you need to chat through what you need it for to know which one to get?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. There are so many providers out there in the market at the moment. Some of them are a bit more like, we could call them the traditional, sort of the old guard of employee engagement survey, which would be providing solutions. It's a questionnaire with validated questions, which is important because you know that the questions are measuring what you want to be measuring, and you will get the support you need. And there are several big providers like that. And there are some of the newer providers that may be using integrated chatbots, like every now and then a person like receives a message on their company Slack channel or through some other internal communication system, and this little chatbot sounds like a person, and they're asking them, how are you feeling today, what's been going on for you, have you had a catch up with your manager lately? And it can then recommend them perhaps some resources for mental well-being. It can recommend them like what's going on for them. It's at the same time anonymous, but it can flag up to their manager if there's something that's going on for this person that needs support. And there are lots of solutions out there. There is no sort of one size fits all. It really needs, each company needs to understand what they can do and what can be the best solution for them. I'd actually be happy if our listeners are interested in that. I'd be happy to talk them through what sort of solution can be best for their business, whether they're at the beginning of their people listening journey or whether they're looking for new, better solutions. There are some things to take into consideration, and it's definitely a world that's both very important for businesses, very exciting, but also it takes some understanding of the individual business needs to address that.
Absolutely. Okay. Understood. That's brilliant. You have your details, don't they? Will be in the end slide. If we go to that, then people can know where to contact you. That's really good. And I think that's the key thing that we can take away on all of this is that yes, there are principles in change and helping people through change that are techniques and tools that we can use and share. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be a bespoke journey. It's always going to be tailored to what the client needs. So whether that's an engagement survey, whether that's the structure of how you run change, whether it's the quick wins that you decide to look at, actually it makes sense to take time at that point to really talk to experts like yourself and like myself to say, actually, well, what is it we need? How are we going to do this the best way? I think that's the biggest thing to share is that there's no right way of doing it. There's no one right way. There's the right way for you, and that's where change professionals can help.
Yeah, absolutely, Dominique. And before we conclude our discussion today, is there like perhaps some program, some particular initiative at the moment that you're running right now that could be interesting for our listeners?
In terms of what I'm helping and sharing information on, general things about how we manage change and how we can best manage our own mental resources and others. I'm also sharing quite a bit of information through webinars and things like that in terms of how to structure. So if you have got lots of different change elements going on, IT, organizational design, all of the kind of office relocation, where do you start to know which milestones, which bits to deliver when when do you get people involved and how do you communicate who should be involved? So I'm sharing kind of top tips on how to do that. And I'm also sharing top tips on how to, in a completely different sphere, but how to regain control of your social media addiction, which we're so I'm going to be taking on board all of that.
Yeah.
But it's the idea of the
Many
social.
of us need some help with that. Yeah.
Yeah, we all do. But yes, it's the kind of outcome of the social dilemma and Fortnite, the gaming. So how have these industries taken so much control of our lives? So it's top tips of how to regain control and start to use them for pleasure again rather than for addiction. So yeah, it's completely separate.
I'm sure everything is incredibly valuable for your audiences, Dominique, and especially with the perspective of neuroscience that you bring into it.
Thank you, and same for you. Same for you. So what webinars are coming up? Because I loved your LinkedIn one that I attended the other day.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dominique. So the webinar that you were able to join me for was a part of my career coaching series, where I help professionals who are looking for a change in their career, perhaps moving into a new role, changing their careers, starting their entrepreneurial journey, or looking to advance in their careers. And I help with career clarity coaching to help them out with their next steps. And I also work with companies where I help them to understand how they can improve their employee engagement, how they're listening to their people, and what they can do, what sort of things they can do to work both with the data and with the behavioral science side of things to create better experiences for their people. Right now, I'm running webinars for HR leaders to help them understand how they can create a culture of coaching in their businesses. This webinar is called Virtual Team Success, Coaching for Performance and Well-Being. And if you would like to join for one of those webinars, feel free to reach out to me through my email that you see on the screen or connecting through LinkedIn. And Dominique, thank you so much for our conversation today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and to hear about your insights and your wisdom from the neuroscience perspective.
Thank you, and always saying back to you, I always learn something really exciting and new whenever I chat to you, so I look forward to these. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for listening. Have a great rest of the week, day,